Reporting live from the cheap seats.
Get your beer here.
This is Section 341 on CFSL Radio with Gregg.
Listen, man, it's week 7 in the books. What are we gonna do? Who's gonna rise to the occasion? These teams. It's almost time for the playoffs, baby. Let's go. I'm Gregg. This is Section 341 on CFSL Radio. We got a lot to get to. We got a lot of games to recap, things to cover. Listen, man, I'm glad that you're here with me. Let's make this work, baby. For 341, let's go. Alright, week 7. Starting this thing off right. Let's go. We got Clemson and Auburn first on the docket. And you wondered if Clemson could capitalize off of the success that they had the other week. And the Auburn Tigers came into town trying to knock off the defending champions. Trying to use their momentum from last week's game, in which Cross Ferry came up big to knock off Clemson. Well, try as they might, the Auburn Tigers came up just short against Clemson, losing 33-21. Javon Mack had 268 yards passing, 47 yards rushing, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Anthony Robertson III, AR-15, had 7 catches for 115 and 1 score. And Mike Chadwick, the key to the game, he had 19 carries for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. On defense, Andrew Fuller had 2 interceptions. Griffin Jokic had 280 passing, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, which proved to be the big thing that turned the game. Jacob Hill and James Madley scored once. Cross Ferry III had 8 catches for 125, but didn't score at all. And Ollie P. Peters had 2 interceptions, and they couldn't turn it into points. Clemson is 7-0 now, 4-0 in conference, still undefeated, and Auburn is 3-4, 2-3 in conference, and still clinging to that third and final playoff spot in the SEC. Next week, Clemson has the Texas Longhorns, and that's going to be a battle for sure, and a must-see game for all of us. And Auburn has Notre Dame. In the next game, we had a barn burner. We had Dewey Ainge with a walk-off touchdown. Yeah, walk-off. Spoiler alert, the Fighting Irish got beat by Michigan, 27-26. Dewey Ainge had 329 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Giorgio Pepino had the game-winning touchdown. He had 8 catches for 143 and 1 score. Adam Croft was also vital in the game, scoring 2 touchdowns, even though he had 38 yards. Miles Freeman had 10 tackles, Jake Leggett had 9 tackles, and Lucky McFadden had 4 kick returns for 129 yards. The Fighting Irish, they had Leo Asiata contributing 308 yards passing, 1 touchdown, no picks. Joe Pantoja, the Raging Bull, 28 carries for 125 and 1 score. Albert Science had 3 catches for 95 yards and 1 touchdown. Michigan improves to 2-5, 2-2 in conference, and still in playoff contention, although they're not quite there yet. They're looking up at a few teams. The Fighting Irish dropped to 3-4 and 2-3 in conference, but just barely holding on to that third and final playoff spot in the Big Ten. Up next, Michigan has Ohio State, and the Fighting Irish have the Auburn Tigers. We're going to go ahead now and take our first commercial break, but we'll be right back with more recapping of Week 7 coming up. And this is Section 341. I'm Gregg, and this is CFSL Radio. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Willie Neston.
And my name is Halbert Norbert Huckby.
And the apocalypse is coming. Whether you want it to or not, so you better be ready.
Act fast or your ass is grass.
Damn it, Hal, I told you not to say that.
Oh, come on, Willie, have some levity.
No, Hal, this is serious. Like the apocalypse. Yeah, exactly. In the apocalypse, you need 3 things. A place to sleep, a place to eat, and a place to pee.
Don't pee outside, cause the air is full of radiators.
Yeah, take it from Hal, the voice of experience.
I am old and wise.
For just $10 a month, you can subscribe to Hal and Willie's Guide to the Nuclear Apocalypse. It's a video series about survival.
And if you want to play some board games, Willie won't do that with me anymore, so you don't have to pay for it.
Damn it, Hal!
It's Section 341 with Gregg.
Back at it, Section 341, CFSL Radio. I'm Gregg, your host. And once again, we're going to go back to these recaps. Next up, we have Ohio State versus Washington. This game was over before it got started. It was over before they got off the bus. It was over when they first made the schedule. But they played anyway. And Ohio State slaughtered Washington 51-28. It was 42-7 in the second quarter. But like I said, they rolled the ball out and they played the game and flipped the coin, and hey, Ohio State came out on top. The goalie had 404 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and 1 pick. Laura Helix had 8 catches for 152 and 1 score. On defense, Eric Lexington had 13 tackles. Raekwon Dog had his best game of the season, had 10 tackles, and Digger Graves had 7 tackles. Ohio State XGA had 116 yards passing and 2 scores, 200 yards rushing and 1 score. Frost Carson had 32 carries for 154 and 1 score. And on defense, Martavis Marriott had 8 tackles, 1 pick, and it was a pick 6, took back 94 yards for a score. Kevin Breck had 8 tackles. Tom Pence had 7 tackles. And Ohio State moves to 7-0 and 4-0 in conference. They also clinched the Big Ten title with a win. Washington moves to 3-4 overall and 2-2 in the Big Ten. And up next, Ohio State has Michigan in Week 8, and Washington has Oregon. And the winner of that game makes the playoffs. So that's going to be a big game. Must watch indeed. Now, for our next game, let's get off into it. If I told you that Jose Bueno played a team, he threw for 307, had 3 touchdowns, and then he had 72 on the ground and 1 score. If I told you that Maximilian Mack had 14 catches for 106 yards, King Twix had a score, Justin Time had an interception, Laquarius David had an interception, Buster Bates had an interception, and Shane Page had 2 interceptions, and Miami went 7 for 16 on 3rd down, you would tell me that they won the game. You would bet your paycheck, your firstborn, your secondborn, and all that you hold dear that the Hurricanes won the game against whomever they played. And I can tell you right now, without a shadow of a doubt, that you'd be dead wrong. Because they played Texas, and Texas came out on top, even though Ray Tatum threw 3 touchdowns, which is good. He had 5 interceptions, which is horribly bad, which is so bad I had to make a word up just now. But they won 40-37. It went into overtime, and Miami had a chance to answer back with a score, and they fumbled the ball. And hey, that's just how it goes in the CFSL, baby. You know what time it is, man. Ray Conley had 4 catches for 90 yards and 2 scores. Howard Cook had 13 tackles and 2 sacks. Jimbo Smith had 15 tackles. Texas won. Even with the worst game of the season by Ray Tatum, looking human, Texas won the game. They improved to 6-1, 4-0 in conference in the SEC, and Miami falls to 3-4, 1-3 in conference, but they're 1 game back of Auburn for the last playoff spot. Up next, Texas has the Clemson Tigers, and Auburn has the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. We're going to take another break, and we'll be right back with the last couple of recaps. This is Section 341. I'm Gregg, and this is CFSL Radio.
Hey, you. Yes, you. Have you ever eaten panda? How about whooping crane pancakes? At Exotic Steaks, we specialize in hard-to-get meats. Eat a dinner you'll never forget. All of our dishes are only available for a limited time. Try our Penguin's Eggs Benedict or our Bumblebee Kebabs. Drizzle our snow leopard sauce on some hot and steamy blue whale baba ganoush. At Exotic Steaks, the only thing that's endangered is your lack of good taste.
This is a sports show hosted by a former All-State player, band player, but he does have some pretty warm takes. It's Section 341 with Gregg.
Oh, yeah. Jamming. Oh, like this beat. All right, we're back at it. Section 341. I'm Gregg. This is CFSL Radio. Let's get into the last bit of these recaps, shall we? All right, here we go. Florida and TCU. So we had all these Kingston Fox jokes all year long. Kingston Fox slide, and Kingston Fox isn't the big man on campus that he thought he was. He's the top recruit in the country. He ain't showing up. Well, he said, let me tell you something. I'm going to take my team on the field, and we're going to beat TCU, which they did. 31-28. Kingston Fox had a pedestrian passing game. He only threw for 122 yards, but he had a score on the ground. And then aside from that, they went 6 of 11 on third down, and he handed the ball off to Avery Jordan, who proceeded to run all around the world. On 27 carries, he had 252 yards and 3 touchdowns. He showed up big time for Florida, and I think that he should be in the running for Player of the Week, which goes without saying. For TCU, James Kovacs had 312 yards passing. Jared Tatonis had 6 catches for 84 yards and 1 touchdown. And on defense, Stokely Ferdinand had 13 tackles. So he obviously showed up to play. Florida improved to 2-5 overall and 1-3 in conference. And TCU drops to 1-6 overall and 1-3 in conference. Next week, Florida has the Hurricanes of Miami, and TCU has Penn State. And finally, the last game of the week, the one that had major implications for one team and not too many for the other besides playing spoiler. Oregon versus Penn State. Oregon had a chance to stake their claim to the playoffs. All they had to do was beat the winless Penn State. Beat Penn State, who hasn't won a game all year, and you make the playoffs. You're in. That's all you got to do, right? Easy, right? Well, they lost. Oregon lost to Penn State 31-24. Walker Mills and Robert Davis combined for 338 yards rushing. Walker Mills had 157 on the ground and 1 score, and Robert Davis had 181 and 2 scores. So they combined for 338 and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Devontae Cribs for Oregon, he passed for 235 yards, which is by far his worst statistical yardage game of the year, and 2 touchdowns. Tickle had 19 carries for 109 yards and 1 touchdown, and Cody Betts had 2 catches for 101 yards and 2 scores. Joe Clark and Shaka Black both had 10-plus tackles on defense, but otherwise they've been a sieve all season long. Teams have been passing and running at will, and they have not showed the ability to keep an opponent below 21 points all year. And they'll have to show up against Washington and win next week, or they may not make the playoffs at all. They started off like a house on fire, but lately they've been showing up just like a wet duck. Get it? Penn State got their first win of the season, and TCU will face them next week. And Oregon drops to 4-3 and 2-1 in the conference. It's going to get real scary next week for Oregon if they cannot beat Washington. There'll be sadness and sorrow throughout Alton and Oregon as a whole, because they start off this season so promising, surprising most of the critics, but you got to seal the deal next week against Doug Oley, Digger Graves, Ron Dent Jr., and the rest of the squad against Washington, because they too are fighting for a playoff spot. And with that said, let's take it home, y'all. Alright, so the question is, who's going to show up big next week? We got some great matchups, y'all, next week. We got Clemson and Texas. They've been going back and forth in chat all week long. Well, matter of fact, for the last couple weeks. But it's been going back and forth all year long. So, Javon Mack, Mike Chadwick versus Ray Tatum and the crew. Next week, that's going to be a wonderful game. Please come in to the chat and watch it. To Twitch rather than watch it. We got the Fight Nights next week against Auburn. That's going to be a great game as well. Going to see if Auburn can come back and get a strong victory against Notre Dame, who also wants to rebound as well. Oregon and Washington, winning you're in, fighting for the playoff spot. That's going to be a great game as well. We're going to see if Oregon and their new offensive coordinator can pull it together against Washington and see if they can scrap and put their name on the ticket to make the playoffs as well. It's going to be a great game. Ohio State, the Sharks, taking on Michigan in a rivalry game as well. We got Michigan, who still might make the playoffs based on their conference record in the Big Ten. We got Ohio State still trying to go undefeated to complete an undefeated season this year. And in the Big Ten, they're the Big Ten champs, so they can claim those bragging rights for the off season and the next season. TCU and Penn State, that's going to be a great game as well. Two teams just fighting for some respect, trying to take some momentum into the offseason. And Florida and Miami, both just trying to have a great game. And I think Miami still might have an outside chance at the playoffs. So, hey, Week 8 is going to be super intriguing. Y'all know who I am. I'm Swaggerton Bear in Discord chat. I'm Gregg. This has been Section 341 on CFSL Radio. All right, peace.
This has been Section 341 with Gregg. Thank you for listening.